Hi everyone, it's Booney. I wanted to make a really quick one, less than 5 minutes probably, video to just think out loud about this experience that I had with my colleagues, Liz and Hope. So we are doing side projects for each other where Hope has a podcast called Mind Brain Movies, and Liz is starting her nonprofit, Psychology for Geeks, and she's interviewing all these helpers and just, promoting a lot of good mental health geeky content. We were watching a movie the other day, and then we wanted to talk about it. And so I'll link in the description below when the podcast is ready. What is the movie? Hold on. Yeah, the movie is Paprika, and Hope is a big fan of all of Satoshi Kon's work. I am too. I'm not as familiar with all of them, but I really do love Perfect Blue, and so if that's a sign of all his great work, and I'm already a fan. So they were just high energy, discussing a lot of different topics, bouncing around, and I mentioned something earlier with my communication style where I need silence. It was just hard to me to have a complete thought, because when I talk to people, I like to consume things, have it form into some coherent thing, and then I wanted it kind of like an essay, but not really, but I want people to understand where I'm coming from so it makes sense. And I relayed it back to another panel that I was on with Liz. She was moderating one about why therapy is so expensive, and I will link that also in the video description, where she had different helpers from psychology and psychologists, therapists, me as a coach, and we were just talking about the field in general, why things are so costly, and the practice as a whole. And by the end of the conversation, an hour or hour plus went by, and I talked for less than maybe 2 minutes, and I was overwhelmed. I shut down. I didn't become mute, but it was very hard for me to follow everybody because everyone had something to say, and it just kept on jumping around faster. By the time I had my formed thought, the question or the topic that I wanted to respond to was 30 minutes past, and so it was very hard for me to keep up with people. And so I just explained at the end very quickly that this was an example of a neurodivergent person who could get overwhelmed and shut down, but this is normally not the case for me. If you have me one-on-one, if I'm in an environment that's safer, if that I'm used to, the comfort of predictability, and so I can present a certain way and people expect me to be that way, like in my videos, the one-on-ones. But if you have me in a group, which is similar to, I'm gonna throw in the typology stuff, ENFPs are known as very introverted extroverts, and the stereotype is also we get quiet around other extroverts, and that's similar to what my experience was. If we have a lot of people engaged in the conversation, I have no problem kind of disappearing behind the scenes and just letting people do their thing, because I'm absorbing all this connection. I'm trying to form what's the novelty that I'm looking for, what's the thing that's missing in this thought bubble that everyone's suddenly contributing to. And so when we had the conversation about Paprika, Hope and Liz would both pause to ask me questions or let me know, hey, what did you think about this? So they wanted to say something, but I noticed that Hope paused as well. She's like, I have a comment, but before I say something, Booney, what do you think about this? And then Liz did the same thing where Booney, I want to know more about what you think about this. And so inside I wanted to cry. I was tearing up a little bit because my history of people wanting to hear my thoughts has not always been so affirming and supportive. And it's kind of this up and down confusing thing where, in my past, I used to have these soapboxy talks where I was very fiery about certain political topics or just the right to exist for certain people. And I would just, preach my kind of language, info dump and say how important this is and why isn't it important to other people? And the response that I would get from other people is wow, are you done with your soapbox? That was a lot of emotion and energy and passion. It was never really engagement that I got from people. It was usually just are you done talking? And they would move on to the next subject because no one would know how to respond to that, right? And so I understand, looking back now, I understand that it was a lot. It was very intense. And so I would get that response, or I would get like, nobody wants to hear about it. You know, sometimes people would say harmful things because my FI, introverted feeling, and we're talking about Myers-Briggs cognitive functions, I wanted to say something that was like about the underdog or injustice of some sort. And in certain spaces, a lot of people don't want to rustle the waters of like, we don't want to talk about that. Like, why do you want to talk about this here? No one's going to talk to you. You're just going to make people upset. And so my history of saying things or thinking out loud to explain how I got to this point, because people are like, how did you get from here to here? And so I would feel so misunderstood. And part of why I explain everything, like now I would think backwards. Like, if you really want to understand how I got to the point, and instead of me feeling like I'm feeling gaslit or having to defend my reasoning, I would be prepared to explain because of these things. I would like be ready, like an essay, you know, like having all these informational points ready. Is like, you're going to ask me how I got to this point, let me explain to you. And so I'd be hyper vigilant to make sure people understand where I'm coming from, because I felt so defensive. And all these things would lead up to me just like, and because of chronic stuff too. And there's a correlation between neurodivergence and chronic inflammation and tiredness, fatigue. And so as I'm aging too, there's this component of just being very tired and not having the energy to cognitively, like my brain is getting tired. And people don't always see that unless you're struggling in your own way with neurodivergence or chronic illness. A lot of people will see me as fully able-bodied, with I'm not judging people for judging that in that way, or that appraisal of me as a person. At the same time, there's a lot going on where I am so drained trying to track the conversation that I am done. So because of that, see, this is what I did, an example of like explaining everything, right? And now I'm getting to the conclusion where Liz and Hope paused to ask me what I was thinking. Like, because of all the shutdowns and the judgments and like the people asking me to stop talking in my lifetime, or not having exchanges, usually just feels like me talking at people, you know, which is why I talk to the computer and the internet. Like, I don't always have the space or opportunity to share what the things I really want to talk about. And so I'll just share with the internet, like, whether I get engagement or not, like whatever, you know, it's an outlet for me. So, having them do that, it felt warm and so supportive, because I know what it feels like to be ignored. I know what it feels like to have no one to talk to. I know what it feels like to walk around and just like, I don't really know how to connect with people unless I talk about the things that matter to me. And sometimes the things that matter to me don't matter to other people, or they don't know how to exchange with me. So I get it. It's awkward. It's uncomfortable, because a lot of people don't think about the same things, like personal identity, you know, like these things like injustice and parallel universes and stuff like that. I'm okay now, but like in certain times and moments of my life, it was hard, you know, like, I guess I'm just going to talk to myself, or I'm going to talk to the animals or the trees, and just like, you know, but then you have to play the role, right? Like, as an extrovert, I need external stimulation. And so I would do that. I would go out into groups and get the social connection and the feedback that I needed back then. And so it's nice to be more subdued now. But again, the stereotype is like, people see certain things and they're projecting and assume. But the assumptions, I'm fine with explaining. I've been explaining it for years on this channel. And so like, there is a diversity and range of being for many groups of people, archetypes of being. And so like, I just wanted to make this video because, again, they heard me, they didn't feel defensive, they understood that this was my experience, and they honored it. Like, I didn't have to beg for someone to listen to me and hear my perspective. I didn't have to like be in denial and wish that someone could just treat me like a human being. It was nice. They treated me like a human being. They wanted to talk to me, they valued my perspective, and they paused. They waited a long time too. And so like, that was something that I had explained to people before in my life, and they're like, could not wait 1 or 2 minutes for me to kind of like formulate a thought, because I was overwhelmed or about to shut down or sensitive at the moment. Silence is really tricky. A lot of people don't like silence. And so for people who understood it automatically and didn't question my wants to feel like communication matters to me too, and my voice mattered, like it meant the world to have that. And so I was feeling reparented. My younger self felt loved for a little bit. And it was, I will link to another video, was like, it's a corrective emotional experience. Like there's all these moments in our lives where we feel wounded or wronged in some way, and that becomes a theme that permeates everything else we see. So one of my themes is like, I feel like my voice doesn't matter, so I should just stay quiet and not speak. And so it's partly why I created my channel, because I needed a space to talk. Because again, all these historical things in my life where my voice did not matter, where I was misunderstood, and so I needed just a place, an outlet to talk. And so, because I didn't want to lose my voice, many times in my life I allowed that to happen. And so having friends and colleagues who understand that nuance of like how different brains work, how different nervous systems affect the processing of information, this is huge for me. And I'm thinking that it's a success for other people too, again, to model and see that it's possible to find people and community that give you what you need to thrive and feel like a human being. It's one of the little things that I think sometimes people overlook if they don't have it in their own like personal experiences of need, right? Or observances with the people in their life. And so this is just another example, my experience, of what people could be needing. Like that quiet kid in the corner who never talks. Maybe if you waited an extra 2 minutes, they might say something that might catch you off guard, like something silly, something funny. Like maybe their processing is a little bit slower because of the chronic fatigue in their body, or maybe they have anxiety, you don't know. But if maybe we were used to silence a little bit longer and we welcome the person to just be around us, you might be surprised, and they might feel a little bit more welcome and at peace to just exist around you too. Who knows? But I wanted to share. I went over 10 minutes, but I think this is a good cutting off point. So I hope that this resonates with people who need to hear something like this. And I also hope that it helps people, especially helpers, who sometimes have clients who don't say anything. Like your silence and honoring someone else's silence, it means a lot. Like I know there's sometimes different ways to conceptualize healing. Like you need to do something and write it down on paper. Whatever you need to do, like whatever you call it, like situational mutism, selective mutism right now, there is always a reason for those of us who can speak but will not right now. There's always a history. And if you can build that safety, it is so healing. It's so empowering to allow someone to stay in their silence. And when they choose to, when they can speak, they will, because you offered them that safety and acceptance right where they were. There was no forcing to speak when they weren't ready. So I hope that is helpful. And if you got to this point, I would really appreciate the comment, the like, and subscribe, and sharing in any spaces where you think it might be useful or resonate with people who need to hear this message. So thanks for watching, everyone. Take care.